Right, so let's look at the first level of factorization. So let us say we have 4y squared plus y. Whenever we're factorizing, what we really want is we want to find things that multiplies to go back to the original. In this case, two things that multiply that would give us back this idea. So let us take a look. Let's observe the terms. So this is one term and this is another term. So we want to ask ourselves, what is the common factor for those terms? We're going to realize that the common factor is y. Okay, so y is the common factor, y to the first power. So what we're going to do is to isolate that greatest common factor, and then we're going to open a bracket. Then we're going to divide throughout by that greatest common factor, right? So think about this, y into 4y squared, the y's will cancel, you're left with 4y, and anything that divides by itself gives 1, and this is plus 1. So this is the factor form. And if we were to actually distribute, then y times 4y would have given 4y squared, and y times 1 would give us y. So you could see it would have taken us back to the original. So when you factorize, if you should multiply the terms, the things, if you should find the product of the result, it should take you back to the original. So that is example 1. Let's take a look at our second example. All right, so in example 2, we're looking at 6x squared minus 4x y. Now we're observing this. We do realize that we have number 6, we have number 4. The number that could work for these coefficients is actually 2. So 2 is going to be the number that we're using for the coefficients. Okay, let me fix that. So 2 is going to be the number. And then for the letters, it's going to be x. So 2x as a team will be our common factor here. So we're going to divide throughout by 2x. Now when 2 goes into the 6, that's 3. When x is divided into x squared, that is x. Then when 2 goes into that negative 4, we actually have negative 2. And when x divided into xy, we're left with the y. So this is the result. So we just took out the greatest, or what we call the highest common factor. We divide throughout by it, and we get that. All right. So basically, that is how you factorize with the greatest, or depending on where you are, we could say the highest common factor. Let us take a look at our third example. So example 3. So for example 3, we have 3p squared minus 9p plus 2p minus 6. Now, again, what we want to do is to check to see if there is one thing apart from number 1 that is common throughout. Well, we're not seeing that, okay? Number 2 would not work with the 3 and the 9. Number 3 can't work with the 2, and so on. So we're realizing that we are not finding one thing that is common throughout. So because it's 4 terms, we're actually going to group them in 2 pairs and then factorize by grouping. So this is our first pair and this is our second pair. We use factorization by grouping when we actually have 4 terms and there is nothing in common throughout. So what we're going to do with each pair is that we are going to factorize by using the greatest or the highest common factor. So 3p squared minus 9p. 3p is the common factor. So we're going to divide these terms in the first pair by 3p. Open a bracket. So when 3 cancels itself, you can see that's a 1. And when p goes into itself, that's also, p goes into p squared, we're left with a p. When the 3 goes into the 9, we could see negative 3 coming, and the p cancels itself 1 time. So 1 times 3 is just 3. Whenever you're factorizing by grouping, the second bracket that you get must look exactly like the first bracket. So you're going to have to make sure that you make the right move so that it is so. What's my greatest common factor here? It's going to be 2 because the P is not common. So it's going to be a plus 2. Let's stop there for a while. Sometimes you might have to use the negative depending on what you want to achieve. But because I need a positive P and a negative 3, then a positive 2 works perfectly. If I divide 2P by P, 2P by 2, I'm left with P here. And if I divide negative 6 by 2, I'll get that negative 3 coming down. If you take a look at the two brackets that we have, they're identical. So because of this, I'm going to just write back one of them because this is now my common factor here. And if I divide throughout by it, if I divide this by it, if I divide this by it, you could see it would have cancelled itself, leaving 3P, and it cancels here, leaving plus 2. But normally what we do, like let us say we're in a class setting, a lot of times what we do is we kind of tell students like a quick way to do it. If you realize that you really got back your parentheses to be the same, you're going to write back 1. And then the other things that were on the outside, like the 3P and the plus 2, they go in the other bracket. Hence, you could see where that is coming from. So when we factorize by grouping, we factorize 2 times. It's called double factorization. Let's take a look at a fourth example. So for example 4, let us say I have ax plus ay minus bx minus by. We're going to factorize this. What is my common factor throughout apart from number 1? There is nothing. So then because it's 4 terms, I'm going to try to group them first. When I group them, I always try to make sure that there is something in common for each group. For example, A is common in group 1 and a minus B will be common from group 2. It means then I am good to go. So let us work on this. For group 1, I'm going to isolate the common factor. It's A. I'm going to open a bracket. Then I'm supposed to divide everything in group 1 by my greatest common factor, which is A. Let us carry out the activity. So AX divided by A, you could see the A cancel, we're left with X. When AY is divided by A, the A would cancel, we're left with a plus Y. Now we're going to look at group 2. Remember that the bracket or the parentheses that we should get must have positive X and positive Y. So I need to take out negative B such that when I divide a negative into a negative, it turns into positive. So we have to look out for that. Again, if you're trying to use a positive B, it's not going to work because we're going to get something that we don't want. And I could show you after. So let us write the correct thing first. Negative B is what we're going to be using to divide throughout group 2. When negative B is divided into negative B squared, the negative B cancel, we're left with positive X. When negative by is divided by negative b, the negative b cancel again. We're left with positive y. Now, the brackets are exactly the same. That means I could simply write back my first bracket and the items on the outside here, I could put them in my second bracket. There we go. Now, let us take a look at what it is that I would not want you to do. So we realize that the first factorization, we got this part. There was a negative bx here and a negative by. Now, I was suggesting that if we take out a positive b, we're going to be in problem because think about dividing this by positive b. When positive goes into a negative, we're left with a negative. When positive goes into a negative, we're left with a negative. And these two will not be the same. So you have to make sure that you choose the sign appropriately so that the result that you need, you will get it. So you have to look out whenever you reach right there.